Students get the idea of reading for knowledge, but unfortunately, most of our students don't read for pleasure. Let's take a look at kind of the typical student's reading journey. Okay, so go back, think about when your first exposure to reading was. It probably was with a family or your parents, and it was a pleasurable experience. You were sitting down, getting undivided attention, getting engrossed in this fictitious story that was exciting and new, had twists and turns. It was a great experience for you. You enjoyed it. You couldn't wait for the next time. Let's move ourselves down the road a little bit. When students first learn to read in early elementary, we're talking like kindergarten, first grade, that kind of time, it's still an exciting time. You look forward to that day you can go to the school library and pick out a new book. You can't wait to find something new, interesting. The whole world's your oyster. All these adventures await. Now, if you fast forward a few years, somewhere between middle and upper elementary school, students really lose their love of learning. They start having to do things like book reports, book talks, comprehension questions, focusing on lexiles. We effectively turn reading into work. Students no longer equate reading with something pleasurable and fun and exciting. It's now something they have to do to get to their free time. When you look at this kind of model, it's no wonder that students hate reading. They just only equate it like reading equals homework is what they see. We've pretty much taken all the fun, all of the enjoyable parts out of it and replaced it with something that they don't want to do. Let me give you another example. My son Cooper, he was in first grade. He was an amazing reader. He was well beyond his lexile. So when the time came to go to the library to check out a new book, my son would go there and they told him, okay, you've got to check out books from this section, not this section, not this section, and so on, right? So he had to go and find books in his lexile. And so he did that. He came home that day and he showed me the book he had chosen. It was the biography of Rosa Parks. Now, and I'm not talking like an elementary picture book biography. It was a biography by a biographer for adult readers about Rosa Parks. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. You can read at this level, but holy cow, there's no way you could be interested in this. And he wasn't. You cannot just force students to focus on a lexile. They've got to be interested. They have to continue to have compelling reasons to read. And if you're forcing them to focus just on the lexile, their ability to read, they're going to lose that love of reading so fast. He was no longer allowed to read books like Magic Treehouse or graphic novels, or he couldn't even read the Harry Potter series because it was too far beyond his lexile. That is insane. We cannot do things like that to our kids without expecting them to hate reading. They're going to hate it, and they should. So after some talks with administration and teachers, we got the situation rectified. Like, if it's a long story, but let's just say he was allowed to choose things more on his interest level and not just based on his lexile. Okay, so we understand that students don't always enjoy reading anymore. But of course, on the flip side, there are so many benefits for reading, especially dealing with a second language. I'm going to give you my top 8 reasons. Number 8 is exposure to authentic language. If you look at some of the studies, of course, by the famous Stephen Krashen, he talks about there's an importance to being exposed to comprehensible input, of course, for language acquisition. Reading provides exposure to authentic language, natural language, over a variety of contexts. Number 7, greater vocabulary acquisition. A quote by Stephen Krashen says, picking up word meaning is 10 times more effective. I'll repeat that again. 10 times more effective. It's faster than intensive reading instruction. So if we've got a way that we can teach vocabulary, we can teach word meaning 10 times faster than what we normally do in the classroom, wow, that's something that should blow your mind. We should be focused on that. Why would you not want that for your students, right? Number 6 is developing reading comprehension skills. Now, there are many skills that you need to know to be able to read efficiently, effectively, and be able to further your journey in the educational world through school, right? And being able to read And read well develops those skills, develops that ability to draw information out of any source that comes your way. So of course, that's going to be in our top 8. Number 5 is cultural insight. Reading can give you insight, can let you delve deeper into a culture in a way that you can't really do unless you are actually there. Of course, live cultural experience is a great thing as well. But reading is one of those ways where you just get a better cultural competence, which is essential for any kind of communication. Number 4 is self-directed learning. Allowing students autonomy to be able to choose the direction, the materials that they're wanting to use to help further their learning is a skill that's going to carry them through the rest of their lives. Number 3, related to one that we talked about a little bit ago, was exposure to various language registers and writing styles. By giving them the exposure to lots of different things, lots of different reading materials, they're going to be exposed to a wide variety of people, personas, just through the writing styles that they come across. Number 2, reinforcement through repetition. We all know that comprehensible input, one of the basic tenets of that is getting exposure to the language that's comprehended, but also repetitive. We're trying to get lots of repetitions in. That shouldn't be necessarily our main focus, of course, but getting those repetitions so that the brain can slowly acquire these individual parts and things and make a conglomerate out of it is so key. And number one, increased motivation and enjoyment. That's what we're going for. We want to bring back that loving feeling that students used to have when they were 6, 5, 4, 3 babies. The sense of joy and wonder that comes with reading that should have never been lost. All right. Now you understand why reading is so important to not only the world language classroom, but to our students as a whole, mind and body. We need to talk about how are we going to get them reading? One quote that I remember by Kelly Gallagher, who is the author of Read Aside, a great book. Thanks, Bryce Hedstrom, for getting me connected to that book. The book talks about finding the sweet spot, not over-teaching and not under-teaching a novel or a reading or whatever we're talking about, right? Over-teaching is when we spend all of our time working with pre-teaching, during teaching, post-teaching, assessments over our reading. Now, don't get me wrong. I do all those things. I pre-teach things like vocabulary or cultural background. I do some comprehension checks during reading, and I do some post-reading activities as well. But when we focus on those kind of activities, like let's say 90% of the time, and we're only reading like 10% or less of the time, what are we really telling our students is important to us? Is it the reading? Is it all these other activities? Under teaching is saying, okay, students, here's your book, go read, and not giving them any kind of support and any kind of activities or skills to deal with both an activity that they may not enjoy, reading, and also now we're talking about a second language, a world language that already has got their brain firing on all pistons. So now we're combining two very cognitively heavy load kind of activities. We need to be giving them skills. We can't underprepare them as well. We got to find that sweet spot, like Kelly Gallagher said. All right, so here's my suggestion. I've got a 3-step progression about reading that I think is pretty solid. Number 1, I read, talking about the teacher. Number 2, we read, teachers and students. Number 3, you read, the student reading independently. Let me break those down. Number 1 is I read. It's where the teacher does sort of a kindergarten style of reading where the students are listening to the teacher read, where the teacher is using their own voice, their own modeling to show them how the reading can be done. Now, one of the biggest benefits of this is the unconscious spread of the joy of reading. Our enthusiasm for reading is going to come out in the reading voice we have. If somebody hears something enough, like our students, they'll pick it up without thinking. It's the way we read, the inflection, the vocal quality, the ability to hear the character will transfer to our students. Because our brain makes connections to previous experiences with material, whether it's a book or a movie or a song, and transfers that to new interactions. Don't believe me? Take a look at this picture of Darth Vader. Read this caption to yourself. Now, if I was a betting man, I can almost guarantee those of you who know who this character is heard those captions, those words being spoken in James Earl Jones' voice, because we associate that with that. From that movie over to this, we've heard language, and now it's transferred over to written language. And that's something our brain does automatically. So if, as a teacher, you're modeling things like that, and there's enough of that going on, enough of the eye reading going on, some of the things, including emotion, becomes unconsciously transferred over to the students. And another benefit of that is we might be even able to overwrite, with enough exposure, overwrite their negative experiences they've had with reading and maybe bring them back into the joy, the pleasure of reading again. Now, stage 2 is we read. A lot of times people think that's just talking about class novels, and for me, that's a main focus, but it can be anything. It doesn't even have to be a novel. It could be a short story. It could be a one-paragraph reading. It could be a story that you told with your class previously. Now, some of the benefits of this are that, of course, everybody's reading simultaneously, and so you're able to see where people are at, and you can give them those extra scaffolding, the extra skills and abilities, like looking at context clues or knowing how to use a glossary to look up unknown words. It's kind of like a step, it's like training wheels. It's a step before they are going to be reading independently. And of course, you can provide other scaffolding, extra help such as vocabulary lists, pictures, or even like in-the-moment discussions to help them keep their comprehension on track. You can teach them reading techniques like decoding, noticing cognates, using illustrations to help, and that'll carry over to their independent reading as well. Now, number 3 is independent reading, my favorite stage. If we've done our job well, by the time we get them to independent reading, they will be chomping at the bit to choose their own materials. Some people call it FVR, free voluntary reading, some SSR, silent sustained reading, DEAR, drop everything and read. There's a whole bunch of names for independent reading. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but this is the stage we want them to get them to in the second language. So hopefully by this point, you've taught them some of those reading strategies and skills like finding cognates, using glossaries, context clues, and now students are ready to choose their own books, and that's also another skill that we teach them, and be able to read independently without any further need of you during that brief time. All right, so in conclusion, you've heard the benefits of reading, why reading has been pretty much drilled out of our students, and now you've also heard my basic 3-step progression on how to help students get back to a place where they enjoy reading again. Now, I encourage you to try to find ways to incorporate as much reading as possible. Thinking back on that Stephen Krashen quote, 10 times more effective, right? So that's worth our time. That's worth 10 times our time, right? Please comment with any aha moments or questions you still have. You can also comment on any topics that you want to know more about, especially dealing with the topic of reading. Is it something that you want to know more about, like, for example, free voluntary reading program, how to help students select their own books, how to choose your own books if you want to include that in your library, how do I go about finding a great whole class novel? Anything you want to know about, that's kind of what this channel is for. My future content is going to be focused on what you need. So please let me know in the comments, email me, contact me. What do you want to see? What do you want to know more about? Those are the videos I'm going to make. So if you like videos like this, please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Also share this video with other teachers you think could enjoy this. Getting those shares and likes and subscriptions help me to know that I'm heading in the right direction, and that's all I want. I want to be able to share this information with you in any way that I possibly can. Okay, Please check out any of my other videos that are already there on this channel. For example, 4 reasons you should be using music in the classroom. And I do want to say thanks for your dedication to your students, because as we know, world language teachers teach the world more than language. Hasta pronto.